The Hangout on Air is live. Hola. Fans of face punching, Dallas Winston from Bloody Elbow. I'm with the great Eugene S. Robinson. Eugene, what's up?
Hey, man. How are you?
Hey! So
Hey,
I'm calling.
I had an interesting event happen the other day. I was walking to work, because I'm trying to up my heart rate and save gas and lower my carbon footprint. And as I turn the corner, some guy looks me in the face and goes, Eugene S. Robinson, which you need to know me a little bit to know that this is like, I'm so incredibly freaking paranoid that this is really like, I'm expecting a subpoena. I'm about to start running. It's an angry husband, something, And so I get as close to the guy as possible because I want to, I don't want to be that danger distance like Mark David Chapman. I get really close to the guy and I say, hey, what's going on? The guy goes, knuckle up! And I go, oh, okay. So I don't know. I thought maybe it was a subpoena. He goes, subpoena? I was like, never mind. So that was the first public sighting as a result of Bloody Elbow.
Fandom versus subpoena. That's got to be a refreshing change of pace.
Parole violation subpoena. You got it. Clearly a refreshing change of pace.
So we're calling this a bad math three-way because Kid Nate was originally supposed to join us, but I don't know, Rough Menzies, I'm not sure. He's out for the day, though. So
how do you like that? Let's charge over that hill. All right, you guys go first.
That's right. He lays out all the groundwork, very specific to Kid Nate's wants and directives, and then bails. So.
That he bails. I'll catch up with you guys. Anyway, we have topics, though, right?
I think so. We were kind of mentioned that there are topics. I don't think either of us knows what they are, but I don't think either of us give a shit. And if anyone tunes into the show, they're silly for expecting some kind of regimented format. So I think we're just going to roll with it.
Well, first of all, my mother has become a fan of the show, I need to say. And she's gotten very disturbed at how often I rub my nose on the show. She says, people are going to think you have a drug problem. And I go, what? I don't? And she goes, just stop joking around. I go, when I start joking, I'll tell you. So now my mother's completely panicked that I have a drug problem because my nose itches. But it raises an interesting point about why my nose itches anytime I do a Bloody Elbow show. Maybe it means somebody's talking about me, or is that your ear? I don't know.
Somebody's smelling you, perhaps.
Yeah, that's for sure. I just finished training, and I'm in my glorious badass motherfucker T-shirt. So which you got to have stones to wear it, and apparently not enough people who listen to the show have stones to wear it. So, but I would like to talk. There was a WTF moment for me yesterday, and if the bald guy is not good for anything, he is good for one thing very specifically. At least once a week, I find myself going, What did this CEO of a major multinational corporation just do? And I'm not talking about Don Sterling. I'm talking about the bald guy Dana White. What? He's calling out frickin' Tito again? He's starting to there's starting to be like a kind of a Captain Ahab-esque aspect to Dana White with this. Come on, man. You got to go gentle into that freaking good night. Relax, embrace it. Proximity to power doesn't create that kind of power. You got a different kind of power. You're rich. Show up in a suit and don't talk a lot. Look at Lorenzo. Look at Frank. Challenging Tito. And what's most shameful about it is that Tito won't take it.
I thought it was pretty. The only thing I saw in this, I know they've been talking about a boxing match forever, so I saw Dana tweet again, something along the lines of he's straight up about the matchup with Tito, that Tito would smoke him in grappling or MMA, but that not only would he take him in boxing, but all caps, he would do so easily.
Yeah, like first round, he said. It's some bold fucking Baron von Munchausen-esque claim,
Obscure Terry Gilliam reference there.
Yeah, I'm sure Dana, he's a cardio kickboxing instructor. I'm sure maybe he's got some chops, most Boston guys like Kevin Weeks said, if you didn't compete in the Boston Smokers from the time you were like 8 years old, you might as well have been wearing a skirt. And I was going to jokingly say, can't you do both? And then, but I don't want to. Boston Irish Mafia, you don't fuck around.
Yeah, that's what I was. And I know that he's been involved in the boxing scene and been a fan, or maybe not even involved is the right word. I know that he's been a fan of boxing, and I've heard that he's trained for a while. But, I mean, then again, so let me play devil's advocate. Tito's stand-up, he's always, I love Tito, man. He was one of my early favorite fighters, and I think that I used to think he got a raw deal, but then he was a dude that was hard to be a fan of, man. He was hard to be a fan of.
Why? What do you say?
For shit like the cracked skull thing, you know what I mean? Like, after a while, it was like, all right.
What do you mean? What is the cracked skull thing? What is it?
There was, I don't even remember what fight it was, but it was a fight he came in and he lost, and he said, I took this fight and I had a cracked skull. I'm one of those dudes that will support a lot of fighters through thick and thin, but after a while, it got really rough for me to be a fan of Tito.
Mm. Well, because he was, you thought he was being unwise with his health.
Not really that, but it was just I felt like he just wasn't like being straight up about a lot of stuff.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I know what you're talking about very specifically.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess on the positive side, though, I look at Tito as a little bit of an innovator for American ground and pound. I mean, he was a pimp back in the day. He got a lot of shit for being a paper champ, but I argue that too because who the hell else was he supposed to fight? Chuck is an outlier there. But, I mean, they brought in Yuki Kondo. At the time, this was not the UFC has all the power in every weight class. So he fought a lot of cats. And then with the Chuck thing, he sat out. He was one of the first guys to, like, put up a fight for the UFC. And he used to say, I want MMA fighters deserve boxing-type pay. Of course, they're not there, but now they've taken many a step in that direction. And he's not acknowledged for that. Go ahead.
Except I'd like to zag here instead of zig. You realize boxing is insane. This whole thing of paying Mayweather $80 million for what? I mean, for his next 5 fights. You got to be kidding me.
There's some shit in the world that's like you can find a loophole in society. Like these cats that are, I know. Some skateboarders, I don't even know what you call that anymore. Some kind of extreme sports, BMX, skateboarding, snowboarders. Yeah. And if they do above, if they go above and beyond, they get like a badass sponsorship and all their shit's paid for and they get flown around. And if they do really well, these dudes are knocking down millions upon millions. Same thing with like... I love tennis players, but those motherfuckers are raking down like halfway through the season. They almost got like $2 million banked.
Yeah, well, you see, but this is the insanity is a contagion because nobody's giving Mayweather $80 million a fight if he's not making 4 times that. So I'd like to say it's a last gasp for boxing, but can we credit that can we credit all of that to repressed homosexuality?
That'd be illogical.
Yeah, well, look, Bob Arum showed his hand when he said, I don't want to watch, 2 tattooed gay guys rolling around on the mat, this is Bob Arum went to that card, So I gotta say that the guys who report, maybe they just like it better. I don't know, but for me, a combat sport's a combat sport. I like boxing just as easily as MMA. Boxing seems brutal to me nowadays, but the fact that so either that means that they could justifiably be UFC fighters, MMA fighters could justifiably be making that kind of money, or boxing people are grossly overpaying because they're in the grips of a collective hallucination that this is somehow value well spent. I'm not sure.
What are your theories on that? Because I've followed a little bit of boxing, but more casually, and I've always been like way more hardcore into MMA. Is it just like the tradition, the American tradition of boxing? Is that why all the dollars are still there?
Well, I think that, and I think it's institutional and it's truly global. With everybody having a relatively similar playing field. Klitschko almost beat that guy to death. He took time out from the revolution. Time out from the revolution to almost beat that guy to death, and so in that sense, in terms of combat sports, it's more like soccer, than MMA, which maybe is still largely felt to be niche. I mean, every country, when I go on tour, every country that I've been to, I've seen some sort of MMA school, but I'd say about 40% of them, at the very least, were outgrowths of some kind of TMA, traditional martial arts, academy. So it's like, so it's like them trying to expand, or rather, guys in town saying, "Hey, man, we'd like to try this MMA thing," or like they say in France, AMM. We'd like to try the AMM thing, and
Wait, what's AMM?
Arts mixed martial art. It's French.
Honestly. Here's a zig instead of a zag on the topic of boxing and MMA. Really, Rafael Butler. Does that name ring a bell?
No.
He's training out at Alliance, but he's a former pro boxer, and I don't have it in front of me. He's fought. I can't even list some of the bigger names, but I mean, legit long career. But he's a Bellator fighter, and he's coming up. He might even have a. I don't know if it's on their pay-per-view, one of their next couple fights, but the word on this cat is that he's been really he won by armbar a couple fights into his career.
Really?
So he's won, yeah, like I want to say he's got like 8 or 9 fights he won by armbar halfway into his career, and that was a couple months after he started to train no gi, and he's a little bit of a different specimen for a boxer. A lot of them kind of come up with their nose in the air with the idea that MMA fighters are sloppy as shit, and compared to boxing, yeah, of course they are. I mean, it's just apples and oranges. But apparently he's taken his, he respects the sport, he knows he has to learn, and he's coming in really training hard-ass, takedown defense and grappling with the likes of, Phil Davis and company, so I didn't know if that rang a bell.
I'm sorry, who? Phil who?
Mr. Wonderful.
I got a big memory of a guy who was just talking a lot of who was that guy? Who was that masked mad who fucking wrote a big giant check that he somehow failed to be able to have enough funds to cover?
Yeah, man, it seems like way back in the day, I don't even remember, but remember Jerry Bolander before, and Jerry's one of my all-time favorites too. You remember
Jerry
before he fought Tito?
Yep.
I've already beat guys better than him in my mind. I've already won this match. I just got to go out, and it's like, damn, if you find yourself saying that, that's just when you some kind of red flag or alarm or buzzer or hot sensation in your loins should trigger you into thinking twice.
Well, there was I don't know if you know Jason Manley. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu kind of phenom. Really good. I think he's now training down in Southern California. But he did something on his Facebook page, which I thought was actually very, very great. He goes, "People I will tap today." And he listed the people he was going to tap today.
That's kind of gangster.
Yeah, it's actually great because he's good enough to actually. So now he's called this shot. All the guys are Facebook friends. They've all seen it, and they're like, "Fuck you! You're not gonna." I didn't follow up to discover whether he did it, but Jason is actually great. He's a great jiu-jitsu player, at least. So I have no doubt that he did it. But yeah, I mean, generalized, you can't give a guy a specific cause for action. I mean, it was kind of a clever stratagem, but Jon Jones really put it in place. But said, man, he's gonna feel kind of stupid when he gets beaten by Rumble. And then, of course, John, I mean, this is the mark of a true champion, which is a streak of sadism, which I like in all my champions on his either Instagram or whatever the hell it was. Jon Jones put up a picture of Davis getting pasted, and then I think the thing underneath said, "Crumble me like a cookie."
Jonesy's he's got an air of don't give a fuckness about him lately. Don't you think he's kind of fucking with everyone and trolling and just stirring the pot quite a bit?
Yeah, I think it's, what is that old thing when it was some tagline for one of the first early reality shows, like when people finally stop being polite. I think Jon Jones is like, you know what? I think he's finally just got punk rock. He got to where I would have been at the beginning. Oh, you don't like me? Let me tell you something about dislike. As close as you could get, you're not nearly as where I am in terms of I hate you much more than you hate me. So I think he's finally gotten to that point. And the public responded in kind, man. People were actually losing their minds over a fight that just had me screaming doom and gloom for his prospective future, you know. Which I'm thinking that some poster on Knuckle Up had a good point. He goes, you know, his style fundamentally is at odds with what Greg Jackson wants to do. That guy should be allowed to go out and improvise like crazy, and he's got proof that works because he deviated from the game plan, you know, and it worked. But, you know, Jackson, like somebody made the claim, I think that Jackson would be Kane to go to Jackson would work fine, you know, but maybe Jones staying with Jackson right now is not so fine, you know. You can't have a guy who executes a game plan when he does much better without a game plan.
Isn't that based on the premise, though? Because I'm thinking Greg Jackson's a smart cat. He's going to try to, emphasize all of his creativity and unorthodox and, improvise. That's a good word. I think Jonesy's probably the most creative offensive striker that we've seen in MMA.
Yep. Yeah, except it's like it's sort of like the Courtney Love and the alleged murder of Kurt Cobain, you know, where people are like, well, why would she do that, you know? And as the letters come dribbling out, come out in dribbles and drabs, you know, it lends credence to the argument that she was about to get cut off, was afraid to lose the money, whatever. I'm not going to go conspiracy theory on this, except that the guy was thinking, or that she may have been thinking as, again, a cause for action that, you know, it'll be easier to, like the Suge Knight thing, it'll be easier to collect royalty checks for a dead guy than it is for a live guy who's complaining, you know. And in this instance, you know, I think it's easier to have been the guy that trained the champ than to be the guy who trained the champ that lost. You know,
right.
I mean, I'm not saying Jon Jones is leaving Greg Jackson, but I think probably in Greg Jackson's mind, that would not be the worst thing because everybody's got to start losing at some point. And do you want that to happen on your watch? You know. So
no conspiracy theories, but you're saying that Greg Jackson is going to attempt to murder Jon Jones, correct?
No, I guess I'm saying that, you know, he was kind of saying, yeah, what you did out there. I mean, some people who had the live webcam for the corner cam could hear all this stuff. That actually would not have helped me because I watched it in a room full of people who were screaming at the top of their lungs with 15 different conversations, none of them having to do with fighting. So I couldn't really hear the commentary. But apparently it was like, yeah, that was really wonderful and great and artistic. But why don't you get back to doing what we talked about, you know? So I think he's creating a kind of situation where, you know, a great "I told you so" situation. But in any case, you know, everything's got to come to an end at some point or another. You know, Jon Jones is a great calling card for Greg Jackson, and I think Greg Jackson really loves the sport and would like to ride it to the end. But I mean, they've got their hands full with Gustafsson, and thus far, I haven't seen them working on. I think AKA does a much better job of actually analyzing competitive difficulties, you know, in their fighters' futures. You know, I don't even with the tape from Gustafsson last time. I don't think I'm seeing that they've come up with a plan. That's why it's been like a dark, nervous time for me post this fight, and I've not been like, man, he dominated Glover. Glover had a separated shoulder, a broken rib, and a gash over his eye, and in my mind, he was still competitive through the 5th round, you know, and he's no Gustafsson. So,
yeah. So I mean, one way to look at that is that Jones pulling that shoulder lock, you know, that from the standpoint of being innovative and creative is getting a lot of love. But how about from a strategic standpoint when you're facing a guy who, you know, 90% of your concern is the thunder in his hands, and a lot of that, whatever that ratio is, comes from that right hand, and he kind of diminished, you know, the potency or took that right out of the mix with that shoulder lock early.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Was that part of a plan or was it improvisation? No, I don't know.
And that's kind of why I brought that up in the idea of Greg Jackson, because Greg Jackson, his role is to, you know, look at all the variables and design a sensible strategy. But then again, what if Jon Jones can, in the middle of a fight, realize he's got a hard overhook on Glover's right hand in the clinch? You know. And
Yeah. I mean, I guess what we're talking about is how good Greg Jackson is, and how much of a factor is a good coaching staff. You know, I don't really know. When we saw one of the most amazing fights Jon Jones fought in my mind was his fight against Stephan Bonnar, because I just didn't see it coming, you know. And who was he coached? You know, who was he coached by then? You know, that was like according to when I interviewed him, he goes, that was 4 months after he started competing. 4 months.
Really?
Yes.
So he started out at Bomb Squad, right?
Yeah, yes, I don't remember from my interview. I got my notes somewhere. I don't remember that, but I mean, it wasn't like he just walked in off the street. He was doing the you know, Greco-Roman, but still, that was 4 months he was in the cage. You know.
Well, I want to say either AMA, but I think it's Bomb Squad, and Bomb Squad is super legit.
Yeah, I think you're more right than not. I'm sort of remembering that from my notes. So they're sort of legit, but still, man. What, you're going to drop you or me in there? 4 months later, we're going to be competitive?
Yeah, right. And to me, Jon Jones is the kind of dude where 90% of his success is going to be within him. I mean, so sure, you want to have... I'm talking in the cage, so of course he's going to get training and look to improve and all that shit. But I mean, he seems to be the kind of cat that's going to ride on his own and, you know, forge his own destiny. Yeah. I mean, there's outside things influencing him in a certain way, but to me, it's all on him, and I kind of respect him for that, you know.
Yeah. No, I don't. I'm a Jon Jones supporter, but you know, part of that support is being able to tell your friends when they got spinach in their teeth, you know. So in other words, I think you want to pile on Jon Jones, you know, all the shit that people have been piling. Oh, he's all that warmed over Rashad Evans shit about. And you know what? I'd like to point out something pretty salient, that Jon Jones is like that Rashad Evans is like one of those girls that, you know, like, how come there are no good guys around? My last boyfriend stole my money and screwed my friends. My boyfriend before that stole more money and fucked more of my friends. My boyfriend before, hey, you don't really come here for the boyfriends, do you? I mean, Rashad Evans is now training Rumble? Didn't he walk in with Anthony Rumble?
I don't know. I didn't notice it if he did.
Man, I think he did. You know, he trained Rumble to fight Phil Davis. What the hell is he thinking? What division is he in? He set himself up in the same situation, you know?
Yeah, you know, I didn't really think about that, but that would make sense, you know, the Black-Zillions connection. And it'll be either, you know, I was, first of all, did you see that coming from AJ?
Yes, I called it.
Did you?
Yeah, he was my pick for it. I don't like the guy, but I just didn't see it going any other way. I couldn't believe the odds were what they were. It's like, are you guys even paying attention to MMA, or is it some other? Are you talking about billiards or poker? What sport are you paying attention to that the odds were that fucking lopsided?
Well,
the guy had troubles before. Troubles had to do with hamburgers. You know?
And we've all had those troubles. To me, that was the kind of the key facet that everyone was missing, is Phil Davis really has never fought anyone that had a prayer in hell of stopping his takedowns. Am I right?
Yeah, and you could see that. He did it like once. He's like, whoa, wait. Second time, he was like, uh-oh.
And even against guys that you'd imagine with his credentials he'd ragdoll, you know, like Little Nogueira when he fought him, and he struggled through that whole first round. Yep. And I thought he was going to do this. I want to say in the first round against Little Nog, he was trying to change levels and get in deep on a double, and he started to switch to a single. Especially with Nogueira, he's got that boxing stance, that more closed stance. So instead of, you know, the whole process of changing levels, penetrating, getting in deep, he just lowered his level and tried to snatch up that single leg and then work from there. And that was the key to the whole fight, because that got him takedowns in round 2 and 3. And I don't remember him doing that against AJ.
Yeah. No, he is, like I said, it's Phil who. I mean, he's really. Man, it's a real quandary. Where is he now? You know, where like I said, I'm gonna knuckle up. Have you seen me? What does he do now? What the hell does he do? I know.
Yeah, I think there's still some good fights. I'd actually like to see him fight Fei Zhao. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But that's another dude that.
Yeah, we're talking consolation matches now, because now nobody's talking seriously about him going up against Jon Jones. That's a joke.
But even I think before that, considering how soundly Rashad beat him, and Rashad is a smaller dude who beat him with the same parameters that Jones would have beat him. You know, it was the range and the distance came in. I mean, if Rashad's going to do that, I mean, it can't be looking good against Jonesy, you know.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Davis had a lot of time to prepare for this moment, and you know, and he's calling out Jones. That's the kind of thing you do, man, when your hand is on the rock, not before your hand gets to the rock. No, come on, come here, little doggy, come here, and you got the rock in your hand already. That's the time, not before. I'm pretty sure I can get my hand on the rock by the time the dog gets here. That's a fool's gamble, you know.
Yeah, I don't know, but from the eye of the public, you know what I mean? Maybe for you and I or people watching like Real Talk, but I mean, for me, I took it as he's striking while the iron is hot, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's that too.
In the way MMA goes, that reminds me of like the tournaments when, you know, there was, you know, Vanderlei Silva on one side and, you know, geez, who would have been on the other side? But, you know, all the tournaments we've seen where you expect this huge collision when either guy on the other side of the bracket gets to the finals. But, hey, you know, what do you fucking know? One of the guys gets knocked out. And so, I don't know. I wouldn't fault AJ for that, I guess. I mean, who gives a shit? I mean, worst case scenario, he gets the title shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think maybe he should. You know, I think if he's got a smart team, they say like, not right now. You know, I got, you know, I like to fight some other guys in the light heavy. Let me see what happens. You know.
So how do you put him? How do you compare or contrast him with Daniel Cormier as far as guys who have like a super legit chance of beating Jon?
Well, it's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back to the famous words of Josh Koscheck. Who I think maybe spoke these words to AJ at a certain point, and he said, you know why you lost that fight? Because you trained with faggots. And he was talking about Kung Lee's team, and that's when the teams were partnered.
That's right, you told me that. And didn't you say either Kung Lee was in the room or close or...
Oh, yeah. Oh, I found out about it because Kung Lee's guys were like, what the fuck, man? We're supposed to be teammates, and this guy is talking like this, and you know. So I think that in general, you know, I mean, Koscheck is his own man, but I think in general at the time the perception was that, you know, that Anthony was not going to be a hard worker. So going into a matchup between DC and AJ, you have to know that you know that the pressure to walk away. I mean, to walk away with the win is you know 9 leagues below the sea deep, man. It's heavy duty pressure, and I don't see Rumble pulling it out against Cormier. I just don't see it, you know. But you know, I mean, Javier with his basis in kickboxing, you know. So we're talking about all kinds of interesting matchups. Kickboxing against Sancho. We're talking about you know, wrestler versus wrestler, Olympic wrestler versus JUCO wrestler. You know, we're talking about, you know, maybe one guy who's trained with Dave Camarillo in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu versus wherever Rumble is now and whoever he's training with now. So I think in each case Rumble comes up wanting. I don't think that's a good fight for him. But it does set things up nicely if DC should not make it past out of his next fight, which I don't see happening really. I mean, I was laughed at for saying that I think Henderson will be a problem for him, but on the outside chance he doesn't, then he's got a good comeback fight against Rumble, which a win would put him back in the conversation. And if he loses to Henderson, fight with Rumble would put him back in the conversation. If he beats Henderson, the Rumble fight would be a good one if he can't get Jones right away for whatever reason. I'm predicting that Jones will come out of the Gustafsson fight, win or lose, needing some time off.
You know, so give me an idea on your thoughts on why you're giving Hendo a good chance against Cormier. Of course, and I'm guessing the general consensus is that, you know, Cormier's younger, more athletic, stronger. You know, Henderson's got decent, whatever you want to call it, great credentials, decent MMA wrestling, but a big right hand, and Cormier's got all that shit, better credentials, and big everything in his punches, plus better technique, timing, and all that.
It's pride. It is pride. I mean, DC is not worried about I mean, I tell you, he could get caught up in like, I wonder, I want to give him a clinic on wrestling. This is another elite level wrestler. I'm going to give this guy a clinic. So he could want to do the dangerous thing and match up with him, wrestling for wrestling, or he's got a big right hand bomb. Nah, let me, I'd like to match up with him, and you can't, it just doesn't pay to be playing these games with somebody like Henderson. You can't let pride interfere. Your objective is to screw that, get him on the ground. Somebody said Henderson's how long has it been since we've seen this vaunted Henderson wrestling? Take a chance, shoot on the guy, take him down, and just cut him up on the floor, and then let it be done with it. So.
Well, with Henderson, he's a clincher. You know what I mean? Like, Rampage is a big dude. Henderson can hang with anybody in the clinch.
Yep.
Because of his Greco background. But if you start to change levels and really attack him low, which is a no-no in all Greco competition, to me that should be Cormier's advantage. But I agree to you. And the thing that stood out to me was if Cormier tries to prove a point on the feet, thinking here's the H-bomb, the guy that hardly ever gets finished. Isn't Vitor the only guy that's finished Henderson by TKO?
Right.
So that's an intriguing matchup.
And then something you mentioned, like what again? I mean, this is another WTF Dana moment. What is this thing with him? Like, since when does a CEO of a major corporation just start mocking employees? He's like, Vita, this press conference where he's like, Vita thinks he's coming back. That guy's delusional. Come on, man. Where's your team spirit?
And that's to me that there's a lot of stuff. It's like Dana's doing what Dana does. That there's a small amount of shit that really does get to me, and that's an example of it. I mean, his whole point. He's promoting the UFC brand and all of its fighters. So why are you going to change your tune and just start dogging on? One of your, especially out of all the guys, this isn't some new cat that's come in talking. You know what I mean? It's been in the game forever. And Vitor's a good guy, you know what I mean? Like, he's had some ups and downs with whatever, but I mean, he's a good cat.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I don't know, I don't know. I mean,
it doesn't do Dana any favors for all the bullshit with Josh Barnett, Jens Pulver, everyone we've seen. I mean, how does that make you look retrospectively when you go back and all these guys are saying, well, they're only out for the brand, they're not out for the fighters, they were all love, and then they kind of turned on me. Well, damn, Dana's doing that not only in public, on a microphone in front of a bunch of cameras. So that's the only thing.
I think the one reason that people like it, and the one reason that it works for like the Diaz's, is because you get the sense that it really is unfiltered and not contrived. That if Dana could be any other way, he would be some other way, and in that instance, maybe it's just really freaking honest. Maybe
it's parts of that I appreciate about him.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's valuable precisely because you wouldn't see another CEO of a major corporation go, that guy's a dumbass. Maybe that's, except, when I use the word contrived, then things get very, very, very strange, because I would say his aiding and abetting the Rousey, the Rousey, the Ronda ducking of Cyborg is smacks of a certain amount of stagecraft. It's like I would rather my old great aunts, my great aunts maxim aphorism of, if you don't have anything nice to say anything. You're gonna fight. You're gonna talk, and you're not gonna talk about something nice. Don't say, it's just. I mean, I don't think there's anybody alive right now who really sees Ronda beating Cyborg. So what they're doing is buying time until something, until such time as it's financially advantageous for them to make this mix. In other words, Ronda, how many you have left? How many you got? Another movie coming up? You want to take some time? Let's do it. And then, I mean, and even if that's the case, I really don't think he wants a Cyborg champion. I just don't think he wants it.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. The only thing that's so trippy to me about this whole thing is they're in two different weight classes, and there's no middle ground.
Well, except you know what? Enough noises have been made where I truly, honestly believe that Cyborg she would make the weight. She would lose the weight. All that shit that she said at the beginning about, oh, this is my health. I think it was a negotiating tactic. She could lose the weight. She could lose the weight, especially now that she's clean. She could easily lose the weight, But what she's saying is, I had to sacrifice all to lose the weight, sacrifice my health. You need to give me more. Why is Ronda walking away with this and I'm getting that? But the resistance, it's like you can talk all you want, man. I just edited an article that somebody had written for us over at Aussie on Mayweather, and they said, well, Eugene, you're the fight expert. What do you think about this article? It's okay. And way down, buried down the article was this whole thing with Manny, Pacquiao, that, well, he does get a little criticism for not, a little, that in my mind, that completely, totally defines the guy. Completely and totally. 80 million a fight for what, I mean, there's only one fight that mattered, and then he almost timed out. He's almost timed out of that fight, Like, I'm still bitter about Fedor and Couture, I'm still bitter about that they couldn't make that deal happen. I'm still angry about that. That means for the rest of our lives, we will, unless they get into a war at the store like Tyson and Mitch Green, we will never see this, And I think if Dana has his way, we will never see Cyborg fight Ronda. And if there's any fight I want to see, that's the fight. Is there any fight that you want to see? Ronda's going to fight Mayweather. They're talking. That would be great. The two greatest duckers in combat sports fight each other in a Bobby Riggs Billie Jean King matchup. For what? No,
I would love to see Ronda fight Cyborg, and from what I gather from your opinion, I think that is an extremely inadvisable matchup for Ronda.
Yep.
I think Cyborg stomps her, to be honest with you.
Yeah, every time. I don't see any other scenario with, oh, you're going to get your hips in close enough to do a throw. Okay. And then what's going to happen to your jiu-jitsu on the ground?
Exactly. Ronda's just like judo. Her judo is like wrestling in the point that, and that's what I always say. People get mad about it. That is a tool to dictate and control the pace and location of the fight. So Ronda can take it from standing to the ground, but when you're faced with a superior striker and submission grappler, your only prayer is to use that control any way you can, just to keep mixing it up and ragdolling people and try to pass it off as some semblance of offense. I'll give Ronda a lot of credit. I do think her striking, at first people were saying her boxing looked a lot better, and I didn't quite see it. In her last fight, she looked pretty well. But the whole thing with Cyborg has always been the only other person that you could watch throw the whole toolbox of kickboxing that didn't look like, and I don't mean to be rude, but let me flip it another way. Cyborg throws her hands like any up-and-coming male fighter would. And there's none of. It's like I always use when I watched the WNBA when that first came out. It was like, no offense, I respect everything you're trying to do, but this is such a departure from the basketball that I've always watched and seen. That's the thing with Cyborg. And I was going to say Carano is the only other real popular female that had close to that level of striking. But Cyborg, there has never been a female mixed martial artist that has the striking veracity. It's to say it's something special doesn't even do it justice.
Yep, and I think you raise an issue. I think this Carano thing, it just irks me I just can't. I hear it. And it's like slowly I turn. Carano, are you kidding? Are you kidding? You're going to bring somebody out of retirement to challenge for the... That is the most craven cash grab, pathetic cash grab ever. And, I've made some money from movies, so I know that, you work 3 months, and suddenly you have enough money to live for the rest of the year. What do? Maybe if Gina's putting her time together, she's training just for the hell of it, because it's what she knows. She's not hanging out with actors. I don't know that, though. I don't know what she's doing with her time. And to say if she's gonna scoop back in and challenge, have Nick Diaz scoop back in and challenge. If that's gonna be an acceptable reality, and I mean, I'm interested to a certain degree with Holly Holmes, but I don't think that's gonna, I mean, I kick Ronda's ass, and I could. Yeah, you got 2 chances. You got 2 chances, and then you're on the ground, and then your arm is getting broken. So
the only option that doesn't smack of someone having an axe to grind or some personal gain being at play is Cyborg and Rousey.
Correct.
So for Carano, she's got the name. Terrible matchup for her. Yeah, so I'm with you on that one, but I don't.
Yeah, but what is that? There's a great line from that Nick Cave song, something about, that this is the only door by which they will exit life. There's some fighters they can fight lots of other fights, but nobody's paying attention. Mayweather can fight anybody, but it's still in my mind, I'm not paying attention till he fights Manny. I mean, Jon Jones could fight anybody at this point, but at this point, nobody. I'm not paying attention until he's fighting Gustafsson. Ronda could fight anybody, but maybe Holly Holm, maybe Kat Zingano, but really, fundamentally, I'm not really paying attention until somebody does some serious talk about Cyborg. Serious business sports talk about Cyborg, and not the ad hominem or attacks. And screw that. I'm not. I don't want to hear any chatter out of it. You want to milk the cash cow? I got it. Go ahead and do it. You'll do it without my, without my connivance. I'm out on that one. So
I like your Kat Zingano mention though, because although far from the top of the list, I think that she's someone potentially being overlooked in this one. She's bad.
Well, they keep mentioning her, and then every time Dana shoots it down, like, oh, she's got other issues. It's like, I'm sure it was the tragedy of her husband's suicide or whatever. But that suicide, I think, came as a result of a divorce action. So this is not like, it's not like she came home in a full bloom of love and found the guy swinging from a chandelier, But again, Ronda makes a lot of money, man. She makes a lot of money. And if you can get near significant fights for her, she's going to keep on making that money. And she's going to keep appearing in movies and TV shows, and she is going to be the face of MMA. She makes a lot of money, And people like her as a heel. They like her not as a heel. I understand all that, but you can't. It's a sport or it's entertainment, man. And the twain have to meet somehow,
And I always say that's like my little rule of thumb. MMA is business and sport, and the business side and the sport side are always at odds. They never, if there's an issue or a dilemma or a solution, chances are that what's right for the business is not going to be what's right for the sport. Yeah. And if there's any way, I guess, to capture any of the disdain I have for the UFC, like I love the UFC, it's MMA. Like I quit fighting that battle. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
If my one complaint would be that their business side of it has too loud of a voice, too big of a presence versus the purity of the sport. Of course, it makes sense. They're fucking business. They want to make money out of it. I'm a fan. I want to enjoy the purity of the sport. But that's always been my bitch. Let me rewind once. When you said that you're not paying attention to anyone Jones fights until Gustafsson, how does Cormier fit in there? Is that just because you don't think Cormier is a legit challenge, or because you know Gus is getting a shot before him?
Well, yeah, it's the latter. I mean, I would expect that if Jones gets past Gustafsson, the next fight for him would be DC. That's what I would expect, and I care about that. But he's got the Mauler got the closest. He's got the shot. You can move the deck chairs any way you want until he fights the Mauler again. It's a scenario that in my mind is incomplete. So.
And why do you think Gus did so well against him? Because everyone was saying it's a dude that struggled against, got choked out by Phil Davis. Do you feel it's his overall evolution? He's now at that level, or it was more of like a styles make fights, a better matchup for him?
I think parts of both, and you can never underestimate the whole Rocky effect. I mean, some guys are like, Travis Brown. He finally broke his silence. They're like, hey, it's a sport where you get your ass kicked. That's really an inadequate response, man. That's a really inadequate response, And if that's what you brought to the fight, that's why you lost that fight. I think Gus rose to the occasion. I think, a secondary Johnny Hendricks GSP fight would have had the same result. This guy, he's like, oh, you're going to rob me on a close decision for ill-defined reasons? You have now put me in a position where I have to murder this man, and murder I will. So I think unless he peaks too soon or somehow, finds himself, his profile has increased to the point where, things get sort of uncomfortable. And I'm very much speaking social issues here, depending on what your poison is, man. You might have a hard time maintaining focus, but I don't get that sense. I get the sense that he realizes the Lost Battalion is a cold and lonely fucking place to be. And I'm not saying that Gus is going to be Lost Battalionized if he loses to Jones again, but pretty close, you know, because he'll be dangerous enough that nobody else in the top 5 will want to fight him, and he will not get if he loses twice, he will not get another shot. I mean, it's like Dos Santos saying, I think Kane and I should match up a 4th time, but Kane's like, shit, sorry, Jake, sorry, Charlie, you know, we like tunas that taste good, not tunas with good taste.
All right, so I know we're a little short on time today, and I'd like to propose a final topic, and we'll wrap it up after that.
Yes.
It's kind of a two-pronger. Really, it's just before, I think you said it was the Stephan Bonner fight that really opened your eyes with Jones. And to me, it was the Shogun fight. And that'll tie into my final topic. The way, to me, that was finally, you know, like super legitimate, the way he dominated Shogun like that. But
and let's keep in mind, that was a true domination. Talking about the Glover as a domination, I'm going to call bullshit on that. Shogun was a true domination.
It was, and because there was no, I mean, it was a beating from A to Z.
Yep, yep.
So here's what I think about with that. After that fight is counter to my opinion on Jones, and if you look at the way he beat Shogun, it was more traditional. It was close range. He just crammed him with that left hook to the body, got him in the clinch. But ever since then, he's almost, it's hard to tell what his bread and butter is. And before the Gustafsson fight, I always used to say, I'm curious when Jones gets tested, gets knocked down, gets behind, and it becomes game time. Not like I'm up a couple rounds and I can fuck around. What is he going to go back and rely on as like his bread and butter, his go-to techniques? And it's fascinating to me that that was the scenario in the Gustafsson fight. And we saw that motherfucker get back in the fight and come back and win it with a left high kick and with a horizontal step-in elbow. To me, that's, I mean, that's crazy. So here's my question. Is that Jon Jones' bread and butter? Is that it's not going to be anything traditional, no package that you've seen before? It's going to be some whacked-out conglomeration based on his whims and his moods? Or is there some kind of structured format as far as when Jon Jones gets behind and or when Jon Jones is at his most deadly? What is it? I don't even know if any of that shit makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think somebody, again, one of the commenters said something really super compelling. He's like, you know, Jon Jones does it best when he's left to improvise, man. And he said that he thinks very specifically that what's going to happen now at Team Jackson is that the floor will be held by Jon Jones, and the essence of his public statement will be, I told you so. I deviated from the game plan, and I won the fight. Had I stuck to the game plan, who knows what would have happened. So, in other words, you know, I appreciate your outside the cage advice, but you have to realize that I'm in there and I've got to make micro decisions. And, you know, it's like when the generals, here we go. It's like when the generals try to tell Hitler, maybe we shouldn't attack Russia now. And Hitler's like, what do you know? What do you know? Look at the Anschluss. Look at the invasion of Poland. What do you? I own France now. What are you talking about? You know. So eventually, guys meet their Waterloo. As I got the World War II reference and the Napoleon reference going. You know. Is that going to be Gus for Jon Jones? I don't know, but he's clearly comfortably in the space of can't be told anything. And some guy, you know, I remember odd periods in my own life where enough success in a certain regard got me to the point where you can't tell me anything. I just got a book published. What the fuck are you gonna, Eugene? Do you want it? You want it on an ebook? Absolutely not. That's crazy. I want people to buy the more expensive model. You know, you couldn't tell me anything. Of course, now they sell the fight book on an ebook, and the sales are sort of doing really well on ebook. I guess like, oh, I guess you guys are right.
Maybe it wasn't a bad idea.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying though. It's like you don't get directives from headquarters for battle tangible shit like never get off the boat.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Right. He went ahead and did it anyway. You know, right. Colonel Kurt style. So I think that's where he is. So that means that what we're relying on right now is the quality of his improvisation and his ability to do some sort of rearward looking that makes some sort of sense, and to actually analyze that fight, you know, with an eye toward how the fuck do I fix it? And in all fairness, I haven't watched the fight a second time, but you know, I'm curious. And he was limping after this fight too, and I'm also curious about the foot.
The thing that's fascinating to me, and we'll quit after this, but I'm fascinated by the Cormier matchup. Yep. Because from a logic, you know, I guess from a proportional standpoint, you'd think he would be the most challenged with Jon and his length and his range and all that shit we talk about. But that little motherfucker is not only a wrecking ball, but he is agile. He's got to be for size to agility ratio. I've never seen anyone better in MMA. I think his foot speed and the way that he's going to get angles are going to be a problem for Jon to keep him outside. Because if
well, I can tell you, yeah. Go ahead.
Jon Jones is the thing. I'll close on this is Jonesy isn't a guy who, if someone comes in, will plant his feet and just crack off a straight right. You know, he's doing all this other shit. So to me, against Cormier, just the way that matchup boils out, that might favor Cormier. He might come in with a head full of steam, knowing I might take a glancing shot here and there, but I'm going to get a body lock on this tall bastard, and then the size favors me.
Also, I see Cormier doing something pretty simple. I see him thinking, I'm gonna shoot, and he's good enough to actually commit 3/4 of the way through the shoot, a la GSP against Matt Hughes. And when Jones scoots back in response to the shot, I can see him doing that acrobatic thing of coming up with a high head kick and good night, Irene.
Yep.
You have to be a great athlete to do that. And
or vice versa. You know, I mean, that's always the game that a wrestler like him can play with. Wrestling and striking, you just play a little game between those two, back and forth, and you can fuck with people all day long.
Yeah, so anyway, we got the light heavyweight. I'm glad Jon has realized that. He stopped fucking around with the guy challenging Cain Velasquez in the super fight. He's like, yeah, I thought I had my house in order. Apparently not. I got a little more work to do to clean up light heavies. So I'd like to see it, you know, and it's invigorated. I'm also sort of excited about heavyweights. You know, there are not too many divisions. I've been really disappointed with women's MMA as of late, you know, and I think that Barao is getting a lot of back chatter from Dana about the whole money thing, and which then makes me feel slightly nervous. And then, you know, I don't know, but light heavy and heavyweight have some juice. I think I'd like to see a little more activity with women's MMA. You know, vis-a-vis Cyborg. That's got to happen. I mean, bring her in, have her fight some of the people, the women on the undercard. You know,
that's what I'm saying. You know, that's what I'm saying.
I mean,
get her over here. I mean, yes, we would love to see her fight Rousey, but she's one of the greatest female fighters to ever walk the earth. Bring her the fucking the octagon.
Well, and also, if I were her, you know, I'd be training like crazy. But yeah, I think English lessons help, man. I mean, I think that when Dana says it would be a nightmare to have her as champ, he's looking at, you know, how easily Ronda can go on Jimmy Fallon and chew the shit for 5 minutes. You know, this makes a difference.
Yeah. I don't know. Anderson Silva wasn't any less famous, you know, even though he could speak when he...
Yeah, except when he beat Rich Franklin and Dana had to put the belt on him, Dana looked like he was at his mother's funeral. Well, actually, he doesn't like his mother. At his mother's funeral.
Ooh. Sorry, you froze up.
So
good. All right, let's get out of here. You good?
Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
Wait, I was thinking about you a long time ago. You told me there was some movie on Comcast right now, Turner Classic Movies. The Servant.
Yes.
Is that it? The Servant?
Yeah, The Servant. Joseph Lucy directed. Dirk Bogarde, Sarah Miles, and James Fox are in it. And do not read anything else on it. Just watch it blind, man. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. You know?
All right. I'll peep it and get back to you on that with a review. Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it.
All right, man. Good talking to you, brother. This is all late.
Right.
I just woke up. I'm not interesting. That's why Eugene had to carry the load.
I see you, man. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.